Stopped on page, was it 112? All right, chapter 9, and the peacemaker who went to war. We are on page 112. It's about mid-chapter. All right, the year before the peace, Nuno's wife died. Nuno hastened to her side and was able to present at the last moments. He had loved the Lady Eleonora de Alva. The 3 years he had spent with her in the tranquility of Pedastra had been, perhaps, the happiest of his life. No one had ever been as close to him as she. No one had known him so intimately, had admired him so deeply, or loved him so much. And during the many, many long months of battle, when she never saw him, she was constantly with him in spirit, praying for him. Historians say that, although at home during the wars, adulations were poured upon her by all the people and nobility of Portugal because of her husband's achievements, she married ever humble and only prayed that he might save Portugal and come back to her. God answered her prayer. Nuno did come back, and he had freed Portugal. Taking the Lady Eleonora into his arms, we can be sure that Nuno told her that their parting was but for a moment, that they would soon be together again, forever in a lasting kingdom. They were united to the Lady of Heaven, the Queen of the Angels, by her scapular token. They had her promise of a place together. They knew, despite their unworthiness, that by the Queen's own word they had not lost the only battle on earth that counts. The battle against the world, the flesh, the devil. After Lady Eleonora's death, Nuno took his little daughter, Beatrice, to Lisbon and entrusted her to his mother, Lady Irene, who had come on from the court of Castile. He was then 27 years old. "Dearest lady," he said in prayer to his lady in heaven, "I once promised not to marry, but to live and to do and to die for you alone. I thank you for my days with Eleonora. I now consecrate the rest of my days, once again, completely and entirely to thee. I shall not marry." The new queen, the daughter of the Duke of Lancaster, who had married Don John, had put a mania for arranging marriages. It was a part of her campaign to check the libertinism of the Portuguese nobility. She labored constantly to draw the Portuguese nobility into martial matches. And as soon as Nuno became Portugal's most eligible widower, she decided that Lady Beatrice of Castries, daughter of the Count of Pierres de Castries, would be the right match for Nuno, and she used every persuasion imaginable to conceive Nuno of the excellence of her choice. "My lady," Nuno finally replied to the queen, not wishing to give his true motive, "that I might offer the hand of a spouse to Lady Beatrice, it needs must be disarmed, and affairs do not yet permit me to abandon the sword." This was somewhat true, because although peace followed a year later, it was only wisdom for little Portugal to retain its army until the peace was assured. The loss of his wife was a great sorrow to Nuno. It was perhaps greater even than the loss of his brothers. Though but 27 years of age, the general seemed unseasonably aged. He had become thinner, his cheeks had hollowed, his nose seemed pinched, more pointed than ever. Yet there was a new nobility in that face, a new depth to the caramel brown eyes, a greater calm, immovability, certitude, obliviousness to petty trials. Nuno was now ready for, I had a frog in my throat. Nuno was now ready for the divine surgeon to cut the last strings to earth, the last strings that held parts of Nuno's heart from that divine and jealous lover. Chapter 10, The Trial. During the 11 years following declaration of truce, Nuno remained with the army. Then, out of his great humility and generosity came the seeds of a glorious trial. Since these soldiers had made the victories possible, Nuno felt that his men were the ones who deserved the gifts bestowed upon him by the king, and he proceeded to divide his vast counties and estates among his officers and soldiers. The kindness of Nuno increased his place in the affections of the people beyond all bounds. But the jurists in Lisbon, who saw landed estates going to men of few letters, and who had done nothing but risk their lives, rebelled. They were led by the already jealous Rodrigues. They convened and connived. They would bring Nuno to trial. They would disgrace him, punish him. There was nothing in Nuno's actions that could be accused, unless one can accuse patriotism, unfailing fidelity to duty, generosity, noblesse oblige. That was it. Noblesse oblige. Nuno was assuming to himself in giving away counties that had been entrusted to him, a right that was held by the king alone. Nuno was making himself equal to the king. He was a traitor, a usurper. The fact that he was given land to govern did not entitle him to appoint a new governor. The king was persuaded. The evidence was overwhelming. All the jurists agreed that Nuno, by giving away his property, as he had done, had indeed assumed aristocratic sovereignty. But rather than hurt Nuno and recognizing the motives that prompted the jurists, the king sent for Nuno. What's that? You can apply this, almost the events in the story and kind of the unfolding, to a lot of different scenarios and people in your life. Yeah, I can too. I can almost think of like 3 or 4 right off the top of my head. And then you have, is it closely related, first, second, third lines kind of a thing. Yeah, it's interesting. They do that with the story of Jesus or the hero's journey or Hook, Peter Pan. Right. Are you a nasty Nelly? Right. So, you can take these experiences and little connotations that are attached to maybe just an event, just a happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that because they were a nasty Nelly one day, does that mean they're labeled with a nasty Nelly and they're going to be a Democrat for the rest of their lives? I know, it's so really fucking stupid when you think about it. I sure hope the proper authorities here in Augusta, Maine do what they're supposed to do to help these children soon. I know, I'm dripping everywhere here. Hold on. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, like stories of redemption, failures, glory, the process, an emotional process when it comes to trauma, or even an uprising. They say sometimes, the excitement of winning a lot of money can be just as hard on the heart as someone dying. We've seen people have heart attacks on both ends of the spectrum, right? Yeah, so these are good things to learn about. It's not a matter of being like, oh, well, I don't get excited, so I guess I'm good. It's like, well, it's nothing wrong with getting excited. Right. Some people can just maybe be overwhelmed, with joy or pain, shock, trauma. Right, and learning about these things and the chemical reactions and how it affects the system. What is safe and reasonable, right? If someone's just going off and screaming, it's like, leave them alone, dude, they just won the lottery.
Okay, well, we're in a library, so can you take them outside? I understand whatever they're excited about, sir. I'm sorry, we have a class going on over here. You're going to have to take them. This is a public space. It's not like you're out in a park having a picnic or at home. This is a library. Take it the fuck out of here, or we will remove you forcefully. Them's the fucking rules. Right, so, I mean, these are common sense things. And the fact that these things are not taught and people continue to mock and just try to point the finger at people that are nastier or dirtier or smellier or meaner, it's fucking sick and stupid. It's gross and it's nasty, and I can't believe how long this shit has gone on. So yeah, my name's Mary. We're at the Governor Hill Mansion in Augusta, Maine, and I have 4 children here. My youngest 2 are in the hands of sick, murderous pedophiles. His name is Michael Scott Garand, and him and his sick mother Shirley, who have custody of my children. What happened here needs to be addressed. What's been going on here for years, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those things need to be addressed. And the fact that people continue to ignore it and make up their fucking childish stories and try to set up shop and do set up shop and move away. Many have set up shop and moved away multiple times, back and forth. Florida, Texas, California, New York, up north, down by yuppies, back again, clickety clack. Yeah, just visit once in a while. Yeah, keep some phone contact, maybe. You want to keep your distance from those kind of folks, though. Right, so we've been doing this our whole lives. So, yeah, you nasty fucking pieces of shit. I'm not sure who the proper authorities are, but we are so sick of round after round of people and their rhetorics. And we have a lot of good people that have been with us for years that know exactly what the fuck is going on and are also horrified, wondering when the proper authorities are going to step in. Horrified at what the state workers and other people have been doing and the fraud and the abuse. A lot of innocent children have been killed while they fucking play these games. That's real life, too. It's not a game, is it? And they're making a lot of money. And then they make money off of uncovering the fraud and playing victim to being visitors of the island. You sick fucking nasty cunts. Okay, so there's nothing you can really do about too much of that, right? Because if it were up to me, they'd be all in jail, right? I know. Well, we can't do that, so we might as well shame them, right? I know, and doing that just gets them angry, and then teaching us a lesson, they really just hurt the kids. They teach the kids a lesson. That's how they teach us a lesson. They spank them extra hard and feed them hot dogs. Isn't it great, folks? Yeah, I'd wake the fuck up if I were you. For real. So anyways, yeah, if you have any suggestions as to how we can help them without breaking the law, that would be great.
Anyways, but rather than hurt Nuno and recognizing the motives that prompted the jurists, the king sent for Nuno, explained the charge, and said that the crown was willing to redeem all the lands with money or by new and authentic grants. Nuno was shocked when the king told him of the charge. "No, your highness," he said. "It would not be right for the crown to make such an expenditure to right a wrong that was never committed. I cannot take back the lands that I have given, because this would be a betrayal of trust, but neither can these jealous jurors take them away. And I, for my part, cannot give up something that is no longer mine. I will tell the jurors this myself." The scene in court was a furious one. The jurors welcomed Nuno, certain that they could trap him and make his plight even worse. Nuno knew enough to have adequate counsel. He fought the jurists on their own ground with their own weapons, but they defeated him. Being a man of action, Nuno gathered his soldiers together at Alemtejo and told them what had happened. Rather than submit to such an injustice, he cried, "I am going to voluntary exile, and I invite any who feel as I do to follow me." In a body, his entire army placed itself at his side. As soon as they were on the march towards the border, it is hard to say what feelings gripped at Nuno's heart. Was this the gratitude of his nation for what he had done. First, in fighting for its freedom, and second, in democratically dividing the lands, what had been given to him as his own. Was the king so weak that he would allow the Congress to impose an injustice? And would the Congress feel that it had achieved its vile purpose when he had gone, and his men with him? Where would he go? To Castile? How would he feed the men? Dear Lady in heaven, he prayed, I never needed your help as I do now. Guide me. I place my confidence in your intercession. Never has it been known, dearest Lady and Mother, that anyone who fled to thy intercession. He had not reached the border before he was overtaken by convoys from King John. Please come back, the message read. There shall be no talk of confiscating the lands. I, by my royal authority, sanction whatever grants you have made. Victorious once again, this time without battle, Nuno retraced the road to Alemtejo, rejoicing with his men. Take another sip of water. You know, if you take a sip of water and you try to talk too fast, you can get a frog in your throat. Or you can choke on it. I seem to do pretty good most of the time. I think it depends on the saliva content and if I'm breathing in or out. All right, we'll read a little bit more and then I gotta go refill my water. Yeah. Awesome. Yes, victorious once again, this time without battle. Thank you. Nuno retraced the road to Alemtejo, rejoicing with his men. You're welcome. Thank you so much. In due order, the donations made by Nuno were officially declared valid by order of the king, and the lands that Nuno had received for himself were retained by him with the right of succession. Everything, of course, was to remain under the supreme dominion of the crown, that thus the rights of all might be preserved. We have already seen how Our Lady returned Nuno's devotion to her by enriching his soul with many virtues, inspiring him to chastity and generosity, humility and love of our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. In battle he would kneel and pray fearlessly, heedless of the opinion of his followers or of his enemies. After battles he erected monuments to God through Our Lady and the saints. He gave his goods to the poor. He was chaste, even though it was not given to him to fully realize his vow of celibacy. The omission became the occasion for him to prove himself a model of chastity for every state of life, whether virgin, spouse, or widower. This fact is attested by the chronicles of the times, particularly the Agiologio Lusitano. In a nobleman of those days, such chastity was a cause for wonder, but Nuno was its fearless champion. More than once he said to his soldiers, "The soldier is the better fighter who holds his passions in check. He who has no esteem for the angelic virtue enters the combat with half of the victory, already yielded to the enemy." I'm like, who documented this? He said that in the 1300s? Right, I mean, someone had to have been keeping a diary or something, writing it word for word. And was it in this language or has it been translated? I'm not sure. Do you know who has the original records there? Archaic records there? The soldier is the better fighter who holds his passions in check. He who has no esteem for the angelic virtues enters the combat with half of the victory, already yielded to the enemy. Nuno had the gift of prayer under any circumstances, even the most unusual. Often in the dead of night, while all in the encampment slept, Nuno arose in his tent to pray, and we have seen him praying in the midst of battle. As for his charity, there is the time he was making a strategic retreat towards Lisbon between major battles. A poor blind man was standing by the road and crying out to the passing troops, "For the wounds of Jesus Christ, carry me with you. I don't want to fall into the hands of the excommunicated Castilians." He was referring to the allegiance of the Castilians to the anti-pope of the Avignon. Yet in the haste of the march, no one paid any attention to him. Then Nuno passed. Having heard the cries, as had done many others who had passed, Nuno turned to the roadside and made the man mount the croup of his own mule, and thus carried him to the nearest refuge 12 miles away. At another time, while engaged in the siege of Caceres, Nuno learned of an espoused Castilian noble couple who had been on their way to receive the nuptial blessings in a nearby church when they were taken prisoner. After the conquest of the city, Nuno sent for them and asked if he might personally lead them to the altar. Having the permission of the astounded couple, Nuno ordered all his highest officials in the richest garb to attend the ceremony. Afterwards, he gave the happy couple a sum of money much larger than they had been able even to offer for their ransom, and then ordered that their possessions, seized by his soldiers, be restored to them. This act won many hearts to him, not only in Portugal but even in Castile. Most outstanding there was Nuno's devotion to Mary and to the Eucharist. It was his devotion to Mary, as he himself so often proclaimed, to which all else might be attributed. As a boy, he had learned about the Immaculate Conception and the Memorare from the monks of St. Bernard. He had learned to say the Rosary from the Dominican friars. He had learned from the Carmelites that he could unite himself to his Lady unto salvation by the scapular, and thus, as a boy, he chose to go to Mary by her principal devotions. Through all the trials, spiritual and physical, he lived the scapular devotion. He lived united to Mary, anticipating her promise of sainthood. We have also said that the most obvious result of this devotion to Mary was love of the Blessed Sacrament. This love of our Lord in the Eucharist seems always and everywhere the first fruit of Marian devotion. "Whoever desires to see me conquered in battle," he once said, "should first distrain me from this sacred banquet, at which God himself, the food of the strong, invigorates mankind. Wholly comforted by this food, I am securely provided with strength and courage to overcome my enemies." Whenever he was obliged to remain for a time in some city or castle, Nuno immediately inscribed himself in the confraternity of the Most Blessed Sacrament, and if the confraternity was not established in that particular place, he established it. And he always ordered the feast of Corpus Christi celebrated in greatest splendor, even when he was at war. Once, while encamped in Spanish territory at Villa de Burguilos, he ordered the feast kept with greatest solemnity, and in the same manner as was the custom before the war. To the wonder of the Castilians, Nuno and all his officers followed the Blessed Sacrament in the procession on foot, accompanied by music and chanting. Nuno's remark was typical. "All this solemnity is little compared to the honor due to the King of Kings, who was thus passing through the city streets." Little wonder, then, that when Nuno returned from his incipient self-exile, victorious over the jurist in behalf of the common people, he became perhaps one of the greatest idols any nation has ever had. Despite the partitioning of his land, there was still so much left from that which King John had given him, and which he could no longer divide, that he was the richest noble in the realm. A great part of the entire kingdom came under his suzerainty, Suzerainty, suzerainty. So high was his station that he was entitled to almost regal honors. Then, as never before, did his alliance to his lady in heaven bear fruit. After being told that she was to be mother to the Messiah, Queen of the universe, our Blessed Mother hastened to do an act of charity to a needy cousin, and said but one thing of herself: "My soul doth magnify the Lord, because he had regarded the humility of his handmaid." Nuno's new high position became the occasion for those three acts: magnification of God, charity, and humility. Our Lady had so enriched him that he had already begun to live as another Mary, and the Trinity was pleased. He sought as much as possible to escape all marks or difference. He shrank from any distinctions. Only when there was question of recognizing in him the authority that he represented did he himself admit it. He would not permit numerous attendants to occupy themselves excessively about his person, or to accompany and add glory to his going and coming. He gave to the poor with his own hand, and with such an expression of interest and warmth that it seemed that he was but one of them, and he gave with such tact and care that it seemed rather that the poor favored him than that he favored them. He also accepted invitations to act as a sponsor at the baptism of children, as he himself expressed it: "I see in each infant a creature justified, and within the church another child capable of giving honor to God." His riches were used primarily in magnifying God by the building and enriching of churches, and in helping the poor. He gave always, and he gave much, not out of liberality common to great lords, but because he was inspired by truly fraternal love. In every man he recognized the image of Jesus Christ. That was obvious from the way he gave. A certain percentage of his revenues was allotted to charity, to provide apparel to the needy, to give grain gathered in years of abundance, so that absolutely no one went without bread. During one period of scarcity, he came to the aid of more than 400 Castilians who had brazenly settled in Extremadura. An historian says he did not consider himself the proprietor of his treasures, but only as their depositary. He was accustomed to say that the poor are the treasure chest of the rich, and that no other act could better deserve God's mercy than care for God's poor. Besides the votive shrines which Nuno built, already known to the reader, there are those which Nuno erected to Our Lady of Martyrs in Estremas, and the churches at Suzel, Portel, Monsaraz, Bonreo, and Evora. At Villa Viscosa, he built a temple in honor of Our Lady's Immaculate Conception, a devotion that increased until Portugal became known as the Land of Mary, and the Immaculate Conception was chosen as its queen. Of the imposing Lisbon shrine of Carmel, Nuno's greatest, we shall have more to say. Most of these churches, either built or restored by Our Lady's Knight, were also liberally endowed by him in her honor. For each he established an annual income to have solemn masses celebrated at the high altar in honor of Mary, to ensure diligence in the care of the holy tabernacle, the little earth house of our Lord. Nuno gave generous alms toward lamps and candles. Anything that detracted from the attention and honor due to our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament grieved him greatly, and when he saw a lamp before the tabernacle unlighted, the sacred vessels carelessly kept, churches unclean, he was moved to correct them himself. In all these things Nuno showed himself possessed of the deepest compassion and charity. But there was one thing in which Nuno showed himself the warrior, exacting and severe. That one thing was the meting out of justice with unfailing fairness. Relations and friends were the very first to feel it if they departed from the norms of duty or even of propriety. His severity was such that in a short while the corrupt manners favored by the successive wars and the evil example of the previous court were everywhere amended. Nuno achieved this partly through renewal of the religious spirit, partly through fear of his chastiments, unremittingly administered to noble and peasant alike. Few there were who did not the more admire and love him. I'm going to pause there. You're welcome. Thank you. We're going to make some tea.